Howdy, boys and girls. Welcome back. It is week 4 of the college football season, and therefore week 4 of the Carla and Crappy Show. Astute viewers and listeners will observe that Carla is not with me. Carla has officially begun her maternity leave from like everything, including the Carla and Crappy Show. And so not unlike Jeopardy, although hopefully with less drama, we're going to have a series of co-hosts sitting in her chair. And that's going to get us through the season until Carla's ready to come back. First up, I am stoked to have Nubyjas Wilborn, who's a colleague of mine at the Post-Gazette in Pittsburgh. He is the current Penn State beat writer at the paper. So he had pretty good seat for the Auburn game last weekend, huh?
Oh man, listen, what an amazing contest, what an amazing week. And it's one of those interesting things where newspapers, old school, Penn State old school. So we right on the 50-yard line, man, and that beautiful old school press box there, man.
Yes, I can imagine. Had you seen a whiteout before?
I mean, I've seen it on TV, never in person.
Yeah, I've been out there twice for whiteouts, and it is incredible. It is mind blowing. That listen, I grew up down south on the SEC stuff. Yeah.
And I didn't really want to believe that it was as lit as they say it is. And let me tell you, it was lit, my brother. It was fun. I mean, and also credit Auburn. Like they had a bunch of fans. Typically,
it looked there are a lot of those old boys from down south made the trip up to State College. And, I think for one, they found out they had a lot more in common than they had different. In a lot of different ways when it comes to, the old saying about Central PA being pretty much Alabama, and then you had some Eastern Alabama fall through. They really could have made the game instead of being a whiteout. It could have made a camo game to see which fan base had the best camo outfits. But oh man, that would work too. That would work. That would be appropriate.
But seriously, it was fun. It was one of those college football atmospheres that you talk about. And I hope that you get more games like this where you get those unique matchups you don't see all the time. I think that was Auburn's furthest trip north since they played at Syracuse, and the first time playing a road game against a Big Ten team since 1931 against Wisconsin. And the atmosphere was great. Like I said, the Auburn fans were there. They had a good time.
Yep.
I saw a bunch of them out downtown on Friday night. They had fun. They had fun at the game. A lot of them came to the game, and they made themselves known. But you
could hear on TV, and clearly, and I know this from being an Ohio State fan and sitting in those stands. If you're wearing orange or if you're wearing red or something at whiteout, you stick out a little bit. So, so it was obvious that the Auburn folks came out in great numbers. We've just sort of jumped into this. And I'm glad we got to touch on the whiteout and the atmosphere. What were your impressions of that game overall? That's as much fun as I've seen so far in this season.
It was a great game. I mean, very riveting contest. It could have gone either way down to the wire. If you're a Penn State fan, you would have liked to have seen them close out on offense instead of giving the ball back to Auburn there. And quite honestly, as a guy writing on deadline, you would have been forced to be a little bit more decisive there because, you write 2 stories at one point because the narrative totally changes. If, Jaquan Brisker doesn't break up that pass at the end of the game. Shout out to Steve Zantz and all the editing crew at the Post-Gazette because that was a wild night, that
They turned out around.
That fans will never understand that part of trying to write on deadline. So
yes. No, the sports desk back in the newsroom turned that around quickly. I was running the website that night, so I was sitting here watching on my laptop, and that game's going down to the wire. I'm like, I do not envy Nubyjas because
it's not easy. And again, I don't want to complain about it because listen, guys, it was a great atmosphere.
Yes.
You can feel that press box shaking. And I got to see a really good football game against 2 good teams.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed my rewatch a lot more than having to write it and having to have a story in right as the game is.
Okay. Okay. As you know, I'm a Big Ten guy, so I pay attention to especially what's going on in the Big Ten East. And Penn State, you got to see the awful start last year.
Oh yeah.
What's changed for the Lions that's made the difference so far this year? Because they look like an entirely different team.
How much time do we have?
As much time as you need.
I mean, everything. I mean, Sean Clifford looks a lot better.
Yeah.
And he's not deceptively fast. He's fast. Mm-hmm. Like he can move the pocket with his legs when he needs to. He can go out and catch and get you a nice little 30-yard game. He can scoot, man.
Yeah.
He's got a good arm. He's making better decisions. The starting offensive line is blocking a lot better, both in pass pro and in the run game. The defensive front seven is a lot better. The secondary is better. They're generating turnovers. I mean, again, we could go on down the line of everything that went wrong last year that's going right this year. I mean, they look like the kind of team that they were in 2019. They went to the Cotton Bowl, which feels like 10 years ago, but it really wasn't.
Ages ago, yeah. I
mean, with everything, the society and, the world being on fire. But outside of that, I mean, 2019 really wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
And the way they've started out so far has kind of reminded us of that.
Okay. Clifford has been, I remember so many games, including the game in Columbus last year. Clifford just looks so uncomfortable during the first half of the season.
Well, yeah, you're going to look uncomfortable when the offensive line can't block.
Because he's running for his life. That's part of it. But I mean, is it the O-line that is improved? Is it he has more weapons? There's got to be some comfort in knowing that if I get the ball in Dotson's hands, good things are going to happen. Regardless of how we do it. What do you have a sense of what's made the difference for him? Just all of the above.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, all of it. I mean, listen, John Dotson is probably one of the better receivers in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
And then you have Parker Washington over there. Keandre Lambert-Smith has really stepped up into a role. Last week, you saw the tight ends. You saw Tyler Warren throw for a touchdown pass.
Yes.
Run for a touchdown pass.
Yes.
Run for a touchdown.
Yeah, that was cool. That was cool play.
Johnson catch, which was a very interesting, weird kind of play. All of a sudden, you see Sean Clifford kick out to the right side in motion, and you see Warren. And I didn't realize up to that point, because I'm still relatively new to the beat, that Warren was actually recruited as a quarterback out of Virginia Tech. Wanted him as a quarterback.
I did not know that.
Yeah, he was a high school quarterback, and apparently Virginia Tech had him recruited as a quarterback. Ends up going to Penn State, ends up converting to tight end.
Nice.
And so, because it was kind of weird, it's like, whoa, wait a minute, they're going to have this guy take a snap. I've never seen this guy take a snap before, and that wasn't a small situation.
No,
it's a major moment in a big game.
Yeah,
and you went with him to take the snap, and it worked. Or as Jaquan Brisker said, he dunked on them boys.
Yeah, he did,
and he really did. I mean, which was like, it's one of those moments where, again, for those who don't know, when you're in the press box to covering a game, you can't, there's no cheering.
There's no cheering.
But there definitely
was
like a, ooh.
Yeah.
It was a fun play.
Okay. I get back to Penn State in a second, and I have to touch on Ohio State because I always do. I'm pleased against Tulsa that they figured out one thing at least on the offensive side of the ball, and that is you hand it to Travion Henderson, and things are going to be okay. Henderson is a true freshman, and he broke the single season freshman rushing record, which had been in place since 1972. Archie Griffin set that record. So that's
you may have heard up on a couple Heisman trophies.
That's pretty good company. And I think that effort was good for third best on the all-time single game rushing.
But like Trey Sermon and
Eddie George is in the second place.
Eddie George,
yeah.
Who's now the coach down there at Tennessee State? Yeah.
Tulsa's a good team, and Ohio State fans don't want to hear this. Tulsa's a good team. I'm not surprised that they can move the ball. I'm not surprised that they can score a little bit. But man, the Ohio State's defense is still struggling. Their coverages are messed up. Run defense is not consistent. They can't consistently pressure a quarterback. In a game against Tulsa, you would think at some point that the difference in talent level should wear down the group of 5 team toward the end of the game. But Tulsa was still a one score game halfway through the fourth quarter. So I'm not sure what to think other than, man, the Big Ten East looks like it is wide open. Michigan hasn't played anybody, but they've been dominant. They've looked as good as they've had in a couple of years. Michigan State looked great on Saturday. We talked about Penn State. Do you have a sense of how that might shake out? I know we're still stupid early in the season, but I mean, this is going from the assumption that Ohio State's going to be the team to beat in the East. Suddenly doesn't look like it's the correct assumption to make, right?
Well, I mean, here's the deal. Mm-hmm. Right now, I would say the country's wide open. Alabama, now again, maybe Florida's better than I thought it was, but they were down 21-3. Mm-hmm. They were up 21-3 against Florida, and Florida darn near won that game. Yep. Clemson struggled to beat Georgia Tech, a Georgia Tech team that 2 weeks ago lost to Northern Illinois. Right. I mean, pretty bad to Northern Illinois at that. So I don't know how good Clemson is. Georgia, they kind of struggled a bit against South Carolina. Yeah. You know, the score was 40-13, but Georgia didn't really put it on those guys like you would have thought they would have. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what that means. But back to Ohio State, I mean, Justin Fields is pretty good, man.
Oh yeah, yeah. There's no question. And I'm not even talking about quarterback play. I think that's been pretty good. But just overall, and the defensive struggles have been a concern. If you're a fan, it's something that you have noticed already. And it just feels like it feels like Ohio State could win the division. It feels like Ohio State could come in third or fourth.
I mean, listen, I think the country in general is wide open. Definitely the Big Ten East is wide open because, and again, I'm not saying that C.J. Stroud is good, but he's not Justin Fields. Yeah. You can't lose that much talent to the NFL every year and expect to be. I mean, unless you're Alabama, and even Alabama, again, like I mentioned, struggled a little bit.
Yeah. That was. If there's a glimmer of hope, like on the national picture, it's that maybe Alabama's. That defense is not where it's been. And Florida's not a bad team, obviously. But for them to come so close to knocking off Alabama, I mean, maybe that speaks to just sort of a level of parity that exists across the board this time.
Absolutely. Listen, I mean, you have a team. Well, really, you don't have a true powerhouse dominant team. Mm-hmm. At least that hasn't revealed itself after these first 3 games. Yeah. Georgia is probably going to be pretty good. They might end up being number 1 soon. And you look at Alabama, they're there. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm curious to see what happens in 2 weeks at Kinnick Stadium. Yeah. Penn State, Ohio, Penn State, Iowa. Yeah. I want to see what happens in that game. I'm looking forward to being there, man. We'll see how that goes for the Nittany Lions if they can be in, because I don't know how good Iowa is. I don't know. Really, you don't know how good any of these teams are.
I know.
To be quite frank. Yeah, but it's weird.
To make these judgments in the middle of September or the end of September is always a dicey thing. But this is what we do, right? It's if you watch college football and you pay attention to this stuff, this is what you have to do. Before you and I go any further. We're going to take a second and let my buddy AJ take us through his group of 5 after dark report and tell us what's going on in the Fun Belt, Mountain West, all of AJ's favorites. AJ, go.
Hey, it's your buddy AJ with this week 4 group of 5 Pac-12 after dark report. We're starting on Thursday with Marshall at App State. This is the battle for Appalachia. And you should absolutely watch this game. Marshall coming off a weird loss to ECU. Didn't really see that one coming. App State looked real solid against Miami. This is going to be just a good, there's nothing better to watch than 2 teams from a small region that people definitely care about. People care about Marshall football. They care about App State football. So watch this game. It should be a good one. We're going to skip to Friday, and then I'm just going to tell you to skip Friday. There is absolutely nothing on Friday you should watch. I will say that anytime I tell you to skip things, just keep your eye on the scoreboard and look for weird stuff, but there's nothing happening on Friday night that is like, oh, if this goes one way or the other, that it actually means anything. This is the entropy of college football. Saturday, noon slate. Same thing. I'm sure something very dumb will happen in the noon games. It's just how these sorts of things go. But ultimately, most of these games are skippable. They're mostly chalk games. There's not even like a feisty underdog going against a favorite. No, these are all absolute games that none of the teams who are favored should have any struggle with. Right? This is the last week before we really get into like conference play. So this is the last time at the cupcake table. However, we do have to talk about the travesty that is the scheduling of Boise State and Utah State. This is on CBS. I don't know why. And it's being played at noon in Logan, Utah. So it's a 10 a.m. local kickoff. I don't understand what's happening here or why CBS is doing this. I guess they ran out of like promotional advertising on Saturday mornings or something. But yeah, this is a 10 a.m. local kick for Boise and Utah State. So that game could get squirrely, but it's also weird that they're playing it at that time. 3:30 p.m. on ESPNU, UTSA at Memphis. Crappy, I'm going to need you to mute me here in a second, but UTSA is good. They are demonstrably good. Jeff Traylor is doing a fantastic job with UTSA, and Memphis got away with one against Mississippi State. But UTSA is a really good football team. Jeff Traylor is getting a ton out of them. Memphis is super fun. You should absolutely watch this game. 3:30 p.m. on ESPNU. Let's slide down to 3:30 again. Illinois at Purdue, because I'm gross sometimes. Sure, why not? Brett Bielema, Jeff Brom. Neither of these teams are terribly good, but hey, this has sicko potential. 6 p.m. UCLA at Stanford on the Pac-12 network. I told you to watch Fresno State and UCLA. And if you haven't watched at least the fourth quarter of Fresno State UCLA, you should. I was up at 2 a.m, losing my absolute mind watching Jake Haener be an absolute monster. That is a late night god, and you put some respect on his name. UCLA made that interesting and fun. UCLA is still a very, very good football team. Fresno just happened to be better. So Fresno State currently best team in California. They play San Diego State on October 30th, and I'm very much looking forward to that game already. But UCLA at Stanford, this is effectively Pac-12, the best team in California. USC looked good, but UCLA coming off of a tough loss, Stanford coming off of beating USC and then handling Vandy. Like, it wasn't even a little bit of an effort. They went to Nashville and had a good time, which I believe is the point of most people going to Nashville. So, yes, I expect this to be a pretty good game. Stanford getting another shot at a team that's potentially on their level. UCLA looking to bounce back after a loss. Find that however you need to on the internet. I'm not going to tell you where, but there are various places to go do that. Also at 6 p.m., Louisiana Lafayette at Georgia Southern on ESPN+. Louisiana Lafayette, they seem off. They're still very good, but they're not 2020 Louisiana Lafayette. They're 2021. They are a little bit shaky. Georgia Southern getting a bit away from the option stuff that has made them really, really good. I think Georgia Southern could potentially get up for this game and take a bite at Louisiana, but I still see Louisiana getting a win here, but moving forward. I regret, though, to inform you that the late slate is rough. A whole lot of chalk games. The only one that could be fun in the 10:30 slot is Oregon State at USC. Oregon State is quietly a decent team. They've largely been the bottom of the Pac-12, the doormat of the Pac-12. That's Arizona now, by the way. You lost to Northern Arizona when you shouldn't have. Good for you, Arizona. You're completely broken. But Oregon State, slowly building. They are not doing anything quickly. They didn't go into the transfer portal. They didn't do anything. They're slowly building. So keep an eye on Oregon State. They could make this interesting against USC. USC came out this week with an interim coach and handled business and looked very, very good in doing so. Weirdly, the last time they had an interim coach, they did this too. So maybe USC doesn't need a full-time coach. They just need to find an interim coach at all times. USC just has permanent interim coach, if that makes any sense. Right? That doesn't make sense English-wise, and the English majors and journalism people who are on this program will be cringing when I say permanent interim, but you understand what I mean here. That's this week's G5 Pac-12 After Dark report. Light week, honestly. Not a ton going on. As always, watch the scoreboard, eat the whole hog. When something dumb appears to be happening, just keep an eye out and tune into it. And we will see you guys next week. Carla, hey, if you're listening, congratulations. I hope everything's going well. Shout out to you, Carla. Welcome to your next chapter of your life. Crappy, back to you.
Thank you, AJ. One more thing to take care of before we get to our feature games, and that is this week's what Carla and I dubbed the Big Red Bears report. Nubyjas, you may or not, I don't know if I mentioned this to you or not. My nephew plays football at Cornell. So we're gonna pay attention to Ivy League football here. Do you have any takes on the Ivy League football season so far?
Well, it's kind of hard. Other than
you can say no. It's okay.
I don't know what's happening with them yet, but I'm looking forward to watching more. Shout out to Cornell though.
They lost to VMI 31-21, and it felt like they were close. These guys haven't played games since 2019. So there's obviously some rust. But it just, watching them, it doesn't look, it's not a bad football team. They got a bunch of super seniors. They have a decent amount of experience. So I think that's something that could turn into a decent season. Yale started with a loss as well. So, perhaps going on the road to New Haven, Connecticut, get some of the clam white pizza, maybe some of that, and then beat Yale on the road in the Oval. That would be a pretty cool thing for the Big Red and for my nephew. So we'll see how that goes. So we'll get to our feature games where we discuss a little bit, make a couple picks, and see how it goes. We're going to start. I don't know how you got Notre Dame on Big Nude Saturday, but Big Nude Saturday, number 12 Notre Dame versus Wisconsin at Soldier Field in Chicago. Nubyjas, I'm going to let you take first crack at this one. What do you think?
Ooh, geez. I saw Wisconsin in person.
Yeah.
Their offense did not look very good when I saw them, but it was only one game in. And Notre Dame really hadn't looked very good in their game so far, even though they won them all.
Yeah.
I'm going to take Notre Dame by 3 here, I think.
Okay.
I'm not very confident, but I'm going to take Notre Dame.
Okay. I just, the super interesting thing here is that, you've got the old Wisconsin quarterback, Jack Cohn, who transferred to Notre Dame. You've got Graham Mertz, who is capable of playing lights out as quarterback in Wisconsin. And he's also, you got to figure from week to week, which Graham Mertz you're going to get. But for Wisconsin, generally that's not a bad deal. I don't think they've had a top tier quarterback since Russell Wilson played there, however long ago that was. But they don't really need them, right? You've got a stable tailbacks. You've got a monstrous offensive line. You hand the ball off. If you can hit a tight end on a pass once in a while, or go deep on play action once in a while, great. And then your defense will keep you in the game, and things will generally work out for the Badgers. Jack Cohn was that too, and that's a troubling thing for Notre Dame, because I don't think Notre Dame needs a better quarterback. Their O-line is green. The rushing game is decent. And while Jack Cohn is, he was at Wisconsin for 17 years before he transferred. I'm not sure that the Irish can get by with just a game manager. So first off, Nubyjas, as a someone from SEC country, this is a game that Midwesterners will love, and it's not. Nobody else will. It's going to be ugly. It's going to be low scoring. But I do think Wisconsin's going to come away with the win in this one.
I mean, I'll tell you what, that would be great for Penn State. I mean,
yes,
that would
it
be
would.
one of the things that helps Penn State out on its road if Wisconsin's able to get a big win like that and get on a little bit of a hot streak. So, I can see it going either way. I think it's going to be a bit of a drudgery type game.
Yes.
That, quite honestly, before I started covering Big Ten stuff, I wouldn't have been as interested in. But now I've kind of.
We're going to convert you. We are going to convert you.
Yeah, I have a little bit of affection for this type of football that's played up here. It's a little different, but it works sometimes.
Okay, that's fair. 3:30 on Saturday. Number 7 Texas A&M versus number 16 Arkansas. This is at Jerry World, so not a home game for either team. The Aggies are favored by 5.5. What do you see here?
Well, I see Texas A&M.
I think Texas A&M is going to win that football game. Yeah. I think they're going to cover. I think they're going to win it.
Okay.
Arkansas has come a long way. I like Sam Pittman. I like what they're doing down there.
Yes.
I don't think they're quite ready for Texas A&M.
Arkansas was ready for Texas, certainly. Texas A&M is a whole different proposition.
Yeah.
And even though the kid who's starting to have the notes here, Zach Calzada, Zeta. They've done a good job of kind of keeping the pressure off of him since he was forced to come in after King was hurt a couple weeks ago. The Aggies have a good running game. He can rely on Isaiah Spiller. He doesn't need to win that game for Texas A&M, or he shouldn't. He shouldn't be in that position in this game anyway. So I think, again, this is a kind of a talent level sort of game. Arkansas is good, and Arkansas is improving, but the Aggies will play like the top 10 team that they are and come out on top with this one. The third game, this isn't one that I would normally include in Carla and I were doing this show, but it's just there's one really huge question, and I'm curious about how this is going to go. This is 7:30 on Saturday. WVU, unranked, at number 4 Oklahoma. The Sooners, correctly, are favored by 16.5. Who is Oklahoma, Nubyjas? I mean, what are they doing? What are they doing?
You talk about these teams that we don't know who they are.
Yeah.
And they're another one of them. We talk about Alabama. We talked about Clemson. Oklahoma's other team. They had to get some big plays down towards the end to finish that game off last week. I don't know if Spencer Rattler is as good as everybody says he is.
I've wondered that too. I mean,
I don't know. Again, it's difficult to judge. So maybe Saturday will tell us more. West Virginia beat Virginia Tech, which was an upset last week.
Yep.
And we thought Virginia Tech was good again. I mean, Mike, we do this thing. We cover this stuff. We go to these games. We watch all these press conferences. And we try to watch as much as we can to be as informed. And I think this is going to be one of those years where it's kind of like dating, right? Like you think you understand the opposite sex or whatever have you, but in reality you don't. You're best off trying to understand the one person that you're trying to be involved with, or people. It depends on how you're living. But
yeah, sure.
I don't think any of this is going to make sense. That said, I do think Oklahoma should beat West Virginia down there, which, by the way, I think we're actually sending a staffer to that one. So shout out to us at the Post-Gazette. Get back into covering some West Virginia a little bit. So
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right. This should be a no-brainer. West Virginia is good. They're not that good. They should not be able to go down to Norman and beat Oklahoma, but Tulane shouldn't be able to play Oklahoma tight on the road. Nebraska, Nebraska is probably a little bit better than their record has shown in the last couple seasons, but
Nebraska lost to Illinois team that lost.
Yeah,
to it. Man, what are we doing here?
Yeah, I don't get. I really thought at the outset of this season that Oklahoma was going to be head and shoulders better. That easy top 14 playoff team. All that stuff, and the offense isn't doing what it should. It only has in their second game. I don't remember who the opponent was, but against decent competition, it hasn't looked that good. Rattler hasn't looked that good, and the defense is giving up over 300 yards a game. I mean the pick clearly is Oklahoma. But this is one of those weeks, they're going to start slow and it's going to bite them in the ass. I don't know if that's this week or not, but it's going to happen if they don't.
Or maybe they keep getting better, because here's the other thing. You got to remember, college doesn't really get a preseason. Doesn't get a preseason. Even in the NFL, we've noticed where the first couple weeks have looked weird because all the starters didn't play, right? And then you also have to factor in, well, there is still a pandemic going on.
Sure.
And I know it's very easy to forget that there's a pandemic going on when you go to see these games and there's 100,000 people in State College and 90,000 people here and all these, thousands and tens of thousands of people. You kind of forget that there is a global pandemic.
Yes.
But
yes,
that does factor into this in a lot of ways where teams are still off schedule. You have freshmen.
You're right.
Who come into campuses who some of these kids are on these campuses and they never visited the school until they literally moved in because of last year. All the recruiting was on Zoom.
Yeah.
So that's going to be,
that's a good point. That's really good.
There's just a lot of weird stuff that's just going on. It's just going to be weird. So just get ready to get weird.
I mean, this game could get weird. As I said, Oklahoma's going to, my pick is Oklahoma, but man, if this game is tight at halftime, to turn it on, because that could be it could turn out to be a lot more interesting than you might expect. Boys and girls, you can hear the Carla and Crappy Show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, etc. You can watch us on YouTube and on the show's Facebook page. If you like us, please subscribe, rate, and review. If you don't, mind your own damn business. Be sure to come back next week to see exactly how wrong how wrong I was. We're not gonna we're gonna let Nubyjas off the hook here.
So I guess like the guest picker, like on game day,
Right. One thing I want to do with you before we go, and this is a background for folks who are listening to the Carla and Crappy Show. A couple years ago, I'd met Nubyjas. He was covering the Pirates at the time, but didn't really know him well. And then at some point, we were getting ready for the Fresh Fest Beer Festival. This is in 2019. And I came across something that said Nubyjas had collaborated with the Church Brew Works, a brewery here in town, on a stout that was going to be served at this beer festival. It's this all black the black beer festival. That's one of the best festivals in the country. And I'm like, whoa! I did not know this about Nubyjas. And we were able to do my other show is a craft beer show for the Post-Gazette, and we sat down and talked about the beer. And I got to tell you, the stout that you made, I know I've told you this before, that you made with the church was one of the best beers I had that day.
Wow, thanks, man.
So it was delicious. I was super impressed. You mentioned at that point you had not been in Pittsburgh terribly long. That you were still kind of missing the beer from home, and you hadn't really found anything here that spoke to you, like some of your favorite breweries back in Atlanta. We're 2 years later. You've been here for a while. What have you found in Pittsburgh beer that you like? Do you have a favorite beer, favorite brewery? What's
Well, ironically, I'm drinking an Imperial IPA from I don't know if you can see it on there, from Sweetwater right now, the
nice.
Imperial 420.
Okay.
Which just picked it up from the local spot on the South Side Slopes. Mike,
okay.
No, what's Mike's? Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Oddly enough, Mike's. Yeah. So grab it from them, and but as far as locally, I'd say my favorite scene is probably Dancing Gnome.
Okay.
They got me through the pandemic, quite honestly, because they had the outdoor seating.
Yep.
It was very comfortable out there, especially during the midst of the pandemic. Once it got a little warm, you could social distance safely. Their IPA scene is pretty cool. Another Mike's, I like Mike's Beer Bar on the North Shore. Those guys are really good. Have a bunch of good local beer.
Okay.
Church Brew Works is a favorite, of course. Shout out to Dan, the head brewer there, a good friend of mine. Insurrection, I think they've come a long way.
Yes.
There's 412, the brewer Adam, who has a professional wrestling background, as well as he played college baseball at Georgia Tech.
I didn't know that. I knew the wrestling thing. I didn't know about the baseball.
Yeah, he played college baseball at Tech,
nice.
Man. So interesting dude. He played there in the early '90s, so he played a lot of guys who ended up playing pro baseball, so on and so forth. So
very cool.
Also, there's a ton of them, but I would just to narrow it down, I would definitely say dancing is probably on my list. I always enjoy those guys over there.
Okay.
Really good group of people.
True.
Consistent beer, but there's a lot of good breweries. I really, once you kind of start to navigate the scene, I definitely have really started to enjoy it.
Okay. We I'm glad we got Pittsburgh beer to grow on you. We will get Midwestern football to grow on you before it's all said and done. I promise.
There you go. We're gonna make it happen, man. Nah, for real, man. I enjoy the scene here, man. It's good people, and definitely. Oh yeah, and of course you got Voodoo, by the way. I didn't mention them, and they got a location in State College. So.
Yes. Can't go wrong with them. Listen, folks. If you're a Post-Gazette subscriber, or if you want to find out more about Penn State, go check out postgazette.com. Nubyjas Wilborn has that team program covered. And Nubyjas, man, I really appreciate this. Thanks for being the first person to step in to sit in Carla's seat while she's out with her new child. And everybody else, guys, we'll be back here next week with another guest host, more fun games to talk about, and we will see you then. Cheers, Nubyjas. Cheers. And
salute.
Cheers to you, everyone. Talk to you later.